What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Landry Hat podcast, powered by FanSided. I'm your host, Zach. You can listen to the Landry Hat wherever you get your podcast. And if you're watching this here on YouTube, please make sure you leave a like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of this off-season Cowboys content. And much like regular programming, our second show of the week, we have Foots the King. Don't forget, you can find him on YouTube, all of his Cowboys content, a lot of really good draft content over there on his channel at Foots the King. And before we get into today's show, talking about the draft, talking about a little bit of off-season house cleaning, Foots, I got to ask you, how are you doing?
Zach, I'm doing good. I told you earlier in the week I caught your show. It was a great setup show for this show. You're getting good at this hosting thing, man. Love what you've done at the fan on the FanSided side of things. I love the interaction over there, bro. Like, it's different. The Landry Hat, they're pumping these things out. You have built it, and the conversations that we have is cool because me and you always talk. We talk after games, we talk draft, but it's just like when you're on different mediums, it's like, okay, you attack things from a different way. Like, and I feel like the Landry Hat is more so like we get to attack. I feel like we get to attack the full team scope. Because at times, I'm not gonna lie, I have my agenda. You may have your agenda, but I feel like with the Landry Hat, it's like we're building something cool with our podcast listeners, with the whole nine. So that's a long-winded way to say, Zach, thanks for bringing me back on, bro. You the boss, and you run a show, and let's roll.
Yeah, it's funny when I do these shows by myself, talking to myself for 25 or 30 minutes. I'm just like spinning in my head, and I got so many different ideas for the show and stuff. But I didn't expect with the Landry Hat for there to be like so many, there would be different people that had never seen me on YouTube or hadn't seen any Cowboys content from us, like getting to know us outside of our own YouTube channels. So that's really cool. And again, shout out to FanSided and Foots for getting on here and helping me out once a week. That's what it's about. So I wanted to talk about the Cowboys draft, do a little bit of house cleaning. I know they haven't found their defensive coordinator yet. If you guys didn't catch our last show last week on Saturday, we did that live, or you can listen to it on Apple Podcast, Spotify. We talked about Matt Eberflus being gone and some names that made sense at the defensive coordinator spot. And a lot of people are going to say, well, they don't have the DC yet, so how can we talk draft? How can we talk about who makes sense in a defense and whatnot? And my answer to that is find a defensive coordinator that understands how to use different skill sets and how to not try to make a round peg fit into a square hole. Like, they know how to use these guys. And at the end of the day, when it comes to drafting, draft good players, draft guys that make sense. And with the Cowboys being at 12 and 20th overall in the first round, we can really talk about all 32 spots in the first round. So I wanted to ask you, just not even ask you, your opinion on getting the 20th overall pick, like what that does if Green Bay would have went to the Super Bowl and been 32 or been 28 or 30. Like, what is the difference between 20th overall and maybe 32nd overall? Like, just having those two picks inside the top 20.
I mean, first of all, Zach, getting the 20th overall pick and that being your only pick would have kind of been a blessing, especially if, like, you know, that's where teams like Pittsburgh, Dallas, unfortunately, they're always picking around 15, 20, take it back to 24. So you have to draft. I've been critical of this team's drafting, and I'm sure we'll talk about it. The second round has been horrendous. It just is what it is. I mean, rest in peace to Marshawn Nealon. That didn't hit. Donovan Ezra who looked like he's going to be somebody, but then Sam Williams. You have Kelvin Joseph. I mean, the list goes on and on. I mean, it's not good. Luke Schoonmaker. So now you have that second first-round pick, Zach. You better draft, and you better get somebody because now you're at the end of your first-round grade. So to break it down to people, every draft, if the quarterbacks don't get bumped up, and some news came out today about Dante Moore not coming out, not want to come out, which was kind of weird to me. I'm always we're talking draft, so let's just get into it, Zach. I'm always of the mind, like, if you have a chance to go in the top 10, you never pass that up because so much can happen in a year. You look at Drew Aller. I mean, he's maybe be a third, fourth round pick, whatever, but it's just a different ball game. Everybody will say, well, NIL. Nah. This is Foots talking here. I've been doing this a long time. You get a chance to get drafted, you go get drafted. Cool. But there will be people who say, well, every team is not a lot of blue chip. Trust me. Teams are going to find and fall in love with guys, and there will be blue chippers in this class. There just will. And when I look at how a draft is constructed, you probably are going to have about 4 to 5 blue chippers, right? Guys that no matter the scheme, no matter the coaching, no matter the front office, they're going to go out there and be guys at some point, right? It is going to happen. A name like Caleb Downs probably comes to mind. Zach, he's a blue chipper, but because of the position, whatever, cool. And then you talk about the actual first round grades, and I'm just long winded here, Zach, because how many first round grades do you think are in a draft class, Zach? I mean, true round ones, maybe 13 or 14.
Yep. In a really good draft, you probably get to 15.
Probably get to 15. So at 20, now we're right at the end of our first round grades. We start the imagination process of, well, he's a first, but he's not because of the size, or he's a first, the arm length, or he's first because he doesn't fit our, whatever. But you know that he can play, and he's not quite second round where with this team has been a toss-up. So I say all of that to say, Zach, it's important. It's very important.
Yeah, and we can talk about the Dante Moore thing too, because that affects the Cowboys. Like best case scenario, this was a really good quarterback class where you have 3 quarterbacks go inside the top 3, and then maybe 2 more in the top 10 conversation. And then those guys start getting bumped down. And then you have other positions like wide receiver and tackle where Dallas doesn't necessarily need guys there. And then maybe you're looking at like a top 5 defensive player in the draft. So Dante Moore going back to school is a pretty big deal in an already weak quarterback class. It's probably going to be Mendoza. And then you have like Ty Simpson, who, I mean, quarterback tax, like he'll probably start going upboards a little bit with just how much people obviously need the position. But I was actually looking at the Dante Moore, his deal, his NIL deal is $2.3 million. Travis Hunter's 4-year fully guaranteed contract as a second overall pick, which is probably what Moore would have been, was 4-year fully guaranteed, $46.6 million. Like you said, it's kind of crazy to just, if you're going to be a top 5 pick, to just give that up and go back to school, because only really, no, I'm not going to say only, but it feels like you can only go backwards from there. Like, yeah, maybe he could get up to one overall, but you got a whole lot better chance of falling to the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th round with poor performances. So,
Zach, let me stop you. Let me put a pin in something you just said. Not to cut you off. I apologize. I'm working on that, Zach. People say, "Foots, you cut people off." I don't want to cut my brother Zach off, but I want to put a pin in something that he said. He can only go back from there. Zach, chat. When these guys run so much RPO and so much, like, where is the development going to happen? He's losing a top 10 pick in King Ceedee. I mean, so like, where? Show me how. There is not. You get your butt to the NFL and you go work your tail off and you go save the Jets. Hey, nobody thought that Caleb Williams would turn the Bears around. It took a year, but guess what? They got the right coach in there, and now he looks like he's a player. Dante Moore has real deal talent, but there were times where I'm like, man, maybe he needs to get away from Dan Lanning and that Oregon staff. They just lost their offensive coordinator. And since this is draft, we could talk a little college football. Like, yes, get out of there and go get that money and show who you are. I think that this is what college football has created. These guys get to make all these decisions. They're looking for perfection. They want things to be. No, I want the guy who's like, and this is why teams are going to love Mendoza. He's a leader. He's quirky, very quirky. Looks like he's almost AI reading off a script. He's not the perfect athlete, but he's going to get the ball out on time. He's going to do the things. I don't think that him going back to Oregon, and this isn't the Dante Moore show, but him going back to Oregon, why? So, yeah, I just want to stop right there because you're right. He's not. And then you're coming in a class with Manning, right? Lagway will probably be in that class. South Carolina kid will be in that class.
Julian Sayin.
Julian Sayin will be in that class. Like, there's some names in that class to where it's just like, really? Hey.
Yeah, the draft is a lot of fun, especially like at this time of the year, because there's a lot of stuff out there, but people like the public or people that don't really get into draft content until the Super Bowl is over. Like, this is the fun part, because we get to form our opinions, and then you get to see how everything changes by the time we get to April. Like, every year, it seems like every year they say this isn't a good draft class. There's not that many top guys, blah, blah, blah. And then by the time we get to draft night, there's 32 first round grades and everybody loves everybody. It just seems like that's how it goes. So let's go over a couple of names. And I kind of wanted to make this into a game about, do they make it to 12 overall? Like, just based on where we stand right now. I know me and you talked about this a little bit with Caleb Downs. So we'll start there. Caleb Downs, safety position that's kind of slid a little bit. Just in recent years. We talked about it on your show. Hasn't been a whole lot of safeties taken inside the top 10, and Jamal Adams, I believe, was the last one. So I wanted to ask you, does Caleb Downs make it to 12? And then what do you think about the Cowboys obviously drafting him, knowing what we do about the safeties?
Well, does he make it to 12? It's crazy to sit here and say that he won't. Here's why I say that. The teams ahead of him have real deal needs. The teams ahead of us have real deal needs. So you're looking at New Orleans. Don't see it. Kellen Moore, offensive coach, going to want to get Tyler Shuck, a receiver. Jordan Tyson. There's some names that could come off. Carnell Tate. I like the Indiana kid. So there's some names that could really come off the board there. Then you start talking about, okay, what if a team in the top 10 falls in love with Jeremiah Love? I don't want to tease anything, so I won't give people too many breadcrumbs on that one, Zach. Then you talk about Washington. Washington has been a team that is kind of like pegged when it comes to Caleb Downs. But here's the deal. Could Washington go corner? Would Washington pass up on one of these dynamic pass rushers? Dan Quinn had Micah Parsons. I tell people this all the time. If he's looking at David Bailey, you can't tell me all the research they're going to do on David Bailey. He's not saying, man, you know what? I see a lot of Micah in this guy. He's not, and I think that is what made Dan Quinn's career like have this shelf life, because I tell people all the time, we're now the Cowboys are actually looking for a defensive coordinator that can coach, call plays, control the back, and Dan Quinn didn't have to do any of that because he got so much pressure, and he would blitz and do those things with a guy like Micah, insert David Bailey. So if David Bailey makes it, that could be a name for the Commanders. Anything in the top 5, there's no way they could go safety. They just wouldn't be able to justify it. So there is a world, and then you look at somewhere like Miami, new coach, depending on what they bring in, their first pick isn't going to be a safety. It's just not. So could that happen, Zach? Could he get to Dallas? I do believe he could, man. I like, people will say, Foots, you're crazy. There's no way. Call me crazy. It hasn't happened since Jamal Adams and what was the year, Zach?
2017.
2017. Hasn't happened.
Football playoffs are here, and Underdog is the best place to get in on all of the gridiron action. The best part about Underdog is how easy it is to play. Just pick if your favorite players will go higher or lower on stats like touchdowns, rushing yards, receptions, and more. Hit on all of them, and you can win up to 5,000 times your cash. The divisional round is up next after a fantastic wildcard weekend, and I'm going to start with the first game of the weekend, Bills-Broncos. I'm looking at Bo Nix for lower than 211.5 passing yards. Trevor Lawrence, by all accounts, had a strong game last week, but he only threw for 207 yards against Buffalo, and I like his weapons a lot more than I do Nix's. Sean McDermott has the Bills' defense buzzing, and I expect them to make it hard on Nix to push the ball down the field. In 49ers Seahawks, I'm looking at Kenneth Walker for higher than 14.5 yards for his longest rush. While Walker is going to concede some snaps on third down to Zach Charbonnet, Saquon Barkley ripped a 29-yard run last week. This 49ers defense has been gettable against the run all year, and Kenneth Walker has a big play ability to him. Moving to Patriots-Texans, I'm looking at Drake May for lower than 19.5 completions. May didn't have a great game, even though the Pats beat the Chargers, and he completed just 17 passes, and now he'll face the toughest defense in the NFL. Finally, I'm looking at Rams receiver Puka Nacua for higher than 98.5 receiving yards. Yes, that's a high bar to clear, but Chicago's secondary is dreadful. Puka could go for 200 yards, and it would not come as a surprise. Download the app today and use the promo code Landry to score $75 in bonus entries when you play your first $5. That's promo code Landry. Underdog, make picks, win money.
That's why I asked the question too, because I think a lot of people are just going to automatically write off if we talk about Caleb Downs or we talk about this guy or that guy. That's why I kind of wanted to just start throwing names out there, because people get in this mindset early on in the draft that like, oh, this guy's going top 10. This guy's going top 5. Like he's just that good. He's that good. And at times you have to look at the positional value and what other teams' needs are. Now the Bengals at 10 make it interesting because they love Jesse Bates so much. They obviously didn't sign him to a long-term deal, but getting a guy like Caleb Downs would certainly help a defense that's really, really struggled. The next name, Rueben Bane. And I think this is going to be an interesting one throughout the entire process. Does Rueben Bane make it to Dallas at 12? And would you be interested?
That one I'm going to say no, just because of his playoff performance. I would 100% be interested. I think what's being overlooked with him and another player, I don't know if you're going to mention him, but teams value defensive ends that have a plan versus the run. It's not all about rushing the passer. Now, I know I just went on a preaching moment about Dan Quinn and wanting to get home. Cool. Get it. Got it. But we do understand that, like, if you look at every team left in the playoffs, they want to run the ball. San Francisco wants to run the ball, live in play action. Seattle wants to run the ball, live in play action. You look at how the Bills want to play. They throw it around, but, obviously their receiving core isn't great. They want to run the ball. So I just think that, and you look what the Rams do, they want to run the ball. And they have two ends, especially with Jared Verse, who's great versus stopping the run. His sack numbers aren't crazy. I think he had like 4 sacks as a rookie, but he's so stout and just disruptive versus the run. So people will talk about the short arms. That's fine, Zach. Short arms, whatever. He's a football player. You look at what they do with him and Messador. They'll put everybody on one side of the ball, and they understand that, and they'll shade the D tackle on another side, so they understand that. And they do this because Bane has the ability to 2-gap. They can put him at a 5. There's been talk about him moving inside to a 3. He's a defensive end, man. He has, I call him Quiddy Pay on steroids. And people will say, well, that's not a name for us. He hasn't hit in the league. He's much better than Quiddy Pay. It's just that same architect of that build. People will look at it and say to themselves, well, he doesn't have the long arms, or he's not body beautiful. Yeah, but he forklifts guys. Yeah, he can still get the edge. He's a demon versus the run. He's giving great and maximum. Go watch the Pitt tape and come back to me and tell me that you wouldn't draft this kid. He's amazing. What he did in the playoff run is crazy. I love Rueben Bane.
I think NFL teams care about measurables and arm length and all of that. But as long as guys aren't like so out of the ordinary that it's like almost like it just doesn't hurt their stock, that I think the way that it does in the media. Like we'll talk about Rueben Bane. People will start picking everything apart with his arm length and whatnot. But when it comes down to it, just watch the film, watch the guy play. He's a really good player. And you did mention his teammate. I really like his teammate at Miami, the other guy. But
Akeem Messador, yeah.
Yes. I wanted to ask you about David Bailey, because I actually just watched his film a couple of days ago and really put together my thoughts on him for this upcoming draft. And there's some plays in there that just literally don't make sense. Like just the timing of some of his moves, you can see him setting them up throughout games. Like a lot of them will look the exact same until they're not, and just beats up on tackles. I can't remember. I think it was Kansas. He had 4 sacks against Kansas, and that wanted to quit by that point. But what do you think about David Bailey? Can he make it to 12? And obviously, seeing the defensive line where it's at with Dallas, he makes sense if he is there.
Bro, listen to me. Him, Romello Height, his teammate, Jacob Rodriguez, like that Texas Tech defense was cool, man. And no, I don't think he does. Like, I hate to be a bummer, but he's just too good, man. He's the one that just seems foolproof. I mean, you think about it, Zach, he was like a freshman All-American as an off-ball linebacker at Stanford. he can still do some of that stuff now. He turns speed to power really well. You hit it on the head, bro. I was watching him earlier in the season. Every game I watched, he was just causing havoc. If you go back to the Oregon tape, the offense couldn't move the ball, and he was just super disruptive. He had a sack. He had like 3 tackles for loss. He's running, chasing. He had a play on a goal line where he knocks a ball down. Like he's a guy, Zach, and those guys don't last at edge because now we are talking that positional value when it comes to like corner and edge. Those guys don't last, Zach. Not with that ability. So I don't see him making it to 12, excuse me, sorry.
So
he
this
won't make it out the top 10.
No, I don't see it either. Based on the film and really the guys that we've talked about so far, I don't really see them making it outside the top 10. But nothing's impossible. Ceedee Lamb was never supposed to make it to 17. There's teams all the time that just talk themselves into other prospects, try to outsmart everybody else. And you really only need that to happen just a handful of times before you pick at 12. And there's a guy sitting there that you didn't expect to be, because that's a cool range to be. Like, as bad as the Cowboys season was, it does make the draft fun. It also makes it fun that they have the 20th. I don't think they're going to do it. I almost know for a fact they're not going to do it because they don't have those second and third round picks. But like, you can talk about these guys because they could package those and move up. If they really plugged as many holes as they needed to in free agency and really felt not great, but good about the roster and felt like they needed a David Bailey, they needed a Rueben Bane, they needed a Caleb Downs, like, then you can start talking about trading up. That's why we can talk about these guys. But here's a guy that people are not going to want to talk about most likely. Jeremiah Love.
Yeah.
Does he make it to 12? I remember talking about, oh my gosh, what's his name from Texas? Bijan Robinson.
Bijan Robinson.
I remember talking about Bijan. And we were the Cowboys were at 24, like early in the draft process, even middle of the draft process. Do we think that Bijan can make it to the Cowboys? He didn't make it outside the top 8, top 6. Ashton Genty, same thing. We talked about him in the mid-teens. Didn't even make it outside the top 6. Jeremiah Love is good. And I know people don't want a running back, but he's special. We say that all the time. Like, he's special. So what do you think about him making it to 12? And then obviously, if the Cowboys were to go running back.
Can you tell that I'm prepared for this, Zach? You ready?
Mm-hmm.
Guess who was drafted at 12 and they actually traded up for him?
Who?
Take a guess. Same draft as Bijan Robinson.
Oh, Jahmyr Gibbs.
So Detroit, who we all think is a pretty well-run franchise, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Good situation over there. They said, nah, you guys don't believe in running backs. We do. We want to run the piss out of the ball. We're going to go up and get this guy. You guys don't want to draft running backs? That's on you. We know what a weapon he is. We know how dynamic he is. He came in game 1 versus Kansas City, and you saw it. I remember that game like it was yesterday because I remember all the arguments. You would be doing yourself a disservice if you did not have the conversation. And me and you are going to have this conversation on my channel, Zach. We're going to have it during the draft when we got our suits on. We're going to have this conversation at the Senior Bowl. This team, it would be malpractice not to have the conversation. He's that dynamic. He's that much of a weapon in the passing game. I call him Marshall Faulk. His body is, he hangs right about 214. I wouldn't wear him into the ground like you did Zeke, but they didn't do that with Javonte Williams this year. And I love Javonte Williams. It's not even close. All of those long runs, those would have been touchdowns. The ability to have 2 running backs consistently, boom, 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 jab, jab, hook, just keep coming. Hey, man, that helps your defense in a way. And you would still have pick 20. You would still have pick 20. At the end of the day, Zach, you have to leave all options open. And that is one of those options, especially when now, how does the defense guard that? They have to give resources in the box. And now you have Pickens, because I do believe that Pickens will get re-signed. You have a play caller who I think if you give Brian Schottenheimer, if you gave Brian, and that's the thing, I think with running back, it's like, well, You had a play caller. You have Clayton Adams and Shoddy. You'll be able to design some stuff to get this guy involved. Jaden Blue's last game versus the Giants ain't stopping foots. Love him to death. He did well. He did a great job. Will the real Jaden Blue stand up? I hope he does. He ain't stopping me, and I'm convicted on that from taking Jeremiah Love. And I do think that I would put it at about 75% chance that he falls just because of the team's needs. You got to watch you do have to watch the Saints, especially with Kellen Moore having a guy like Saquon, like he did in Philly, but he wouldn't stop me at all.
Something else that might could keep Love moving down the board is some of those wide receivers with Carnell Tate and Mekhi Lemon and Jordan Tyson and those. But you talking about the Lions made me think of something. People are going to say, well, you can't rebuild your defense if you draft a running back at 12. The Lions moved up to 12, still in the same draft, took Jack Campbell, middle linebacker from Iowa, and then who was
all pro this year. Who was all pro this year.
And then took Brian Branch at 45 overall. And then took Broderick Martin at 96 overall. They did pretty good taking a running back at 12. Like you said, though, they didn't run him into the ground. You can't do that with every running back like they did with Zeke, giving him 300 touches a year for 3 or 4 years straight and expecting him to hold up. People are going to think it's malpractice that we're talking about it, but I agree with you that it's malpractice if it's not in the conversation, because you don't want to say, we're not taking the running back, we're not taking the running back, we're not taking the running back, and then him be sitting there when he can make your team better. Literally make your, I mean, could you imagine Ceedee Lamb, Jeremiah Love, and George Pickens? Like, that doesn't make any sense. So
it makes your offense a true juggernaut.
Oh, yeah, it really does. It just adds a dynamic that, as much as we love Javonte Williams, you didn't have with Javonte Williams. So to close out the show, of the names that you have watched, I know you have your top 50, probably watched a couple more than that too. I wanted to ask you, who is the player that's going to be the most linked guy to the Cowboys in this draft amongst other people's mocks, Cowboys creators trying to most likely fix this defense? That's what it's going to be geared towards. Who are people going to hear about the absolute most?
I think it's going to be Mansour Delane, and I think for good reason. I think he's a safe, smart pick that makes sense. This isn't a consolation, in my opinion, Zach. He was one of the first players that we talked about. We'll do more research on this, Zach, but depending on who they bring in as far as defensive coordinator-wise, he better be able to communicate to that back end and make sure that these guys can get better. I think that if you brought in Mansour Delane, he's already pro-ready in zone and in man. Great tackler. You're watching these Texans play defense, Zach, and nobody is throwing a party because they're tackling. This is what they do. We had to throw a party to look, Diggs made a tackle. It's a once-in-a-lifetime occurrence. No, that's not good. That's the retooling and the rethinking that this franchise needs to have with this new defensive coordinator, with the whole nine. And so when you have a guy like Mansour who's already put that on tape, like even when he was at Alabama, Diggs was never a fierce tackler. He just didn't want to do it. You know what I mean? And so I just say all that to say, I think that's the name who's going to be linked to the Cowboys most. Maybe Sonny Styles, but I have thoughts on the linebacker. I feel like that's more of a 20 pick if we're being real. I do. I don't think that any of these guys outside of Arvell Reese, you look at them and say they need to go top 15. They're at the end of my blue chip list. No. I like Sonny Styles a lot. I do. I see the upside, but former safety at times struggles to disengage off of blocks. It's only going to get harder in the NFL. I think you hit that in free agency. I like Sonny Styles. I love him at 20.
Yeah, I think you hit it right on the head. It's probably going to be Delane. It's probably going to be Styles, just because the linebacker, you can easily make it work that he gets to 12, and the Cowboys need a linebacker. Same thing with Delane, just based on the other positions that are a little bit higher on the board, and where people are probably going to have him graded. Those are probably the two guys that I would say. And if Jeremiah Love does kind of just start sliding down these people's mock draft boards, like Dallas is the obvious spot because that gets the most buzz and stuff. on
Agreed.
these articles. So that's going to do
Agreed.
it for today's show. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed, please be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more Cowboys content here on the Landry Hat. Me and Foots once a week. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, please leave us a 5-star review. I'm going on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and I'm reading these 5 stars. All right. Help us get higher in the algorithm, and we will see you guys next week. Thank you for watching. Bye.